Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. So nice to see a big turnout for our one and only Shirley Nakata. Can everyone hear me okay in the back? Yes. Okay, great. And there are people who have joined us from Zoom. So if there are issues with audio or visual, please pop it in the chat. So welcome to the first Hot Lunch of 2024. My name is Joanna Yang. I'm part of the Hot Lunch Committee. Welcome to St. John's College. We're situated on the ancestral, unceded, traditional territory of the Musqueam First Nation people. And while this acknowledgement has become commonplace for many of us at UBC, I hope that this moment serves as a reminder of our collective responsibility to continue learning and unlearning about this place, this land and its original inhabitants. Personally, for me, land acknowledgements challenge me to reflect on the complex implications of living, working, studying on this unceded land as a second-generation Chinese-Canadian settler. St. John's College is an international graduate college and hub, home to over 160 graduate students from 40+ countries. And we have also been home to the Hot Lunch Initiative for 10 years. So today marks the month and the year, the 10 month, sorry, we started in January 2014, okay? And we're so happy that Shirley has finally agreed after 10 years of prodding to come up and be our guest speaker. We're also so thankful for the continued support of everyone here, who here is new to the Hot Lunch Committee or Hot Lunch Initiative. Okay, like 15 of you, that's really great to see. And then for everyone else, welcome back, whether it's your second or 50th time. We're really happy to see you, and we're thankful for the continued support from Human Resources. So 10 years ago, the dream was to fill this room by enticing staff to leave their productivity, focus at their desks to share a meal that was hot with other people. And it seems like we've achieved that goal. And we are thankful that HR has helped subsidize this initiative so that we continue to pay just $10. So it was $10 a decade ago, and we are asserting that we'd like to keep it that way. The Hot Lunch Committee, the founding committee, inclusive of Shirley, were really, really instrumental in making sure that this happens. So 10 years ago, actually, our VP HR at the time, Lisa Castle, was our first guest. So for today's speaker, you can trust me in saying that she's one of the best people I know. I think a lot of people here would agree. She is UBC's first Ombudsperson for students. And if you don't know what that is, she will tell you. She has an extensive background in practicing administrative law, and she was called to the BC Bar in 1989 after obtaining her degrees at UBC. She practiced law at Russell and Dumoulin, now Fasken-Martineau, before moving to the Canadian Human Rights Commission, where she worked as a human rights officer. From 1996 to 2009, she was the Director of Professional Conduct at the BC College of Teachers, where she gained extensive experience in investigations and the conduct of hearings and expertise in the area of administrative law. She has been a frequent presenter on admin law and professional regulatory issues, and has been a board member for the BC Council of Administrative Tribunals and member of the Canadian Institute for the Administration of Justice. She is a member of the Association of Canadian College and University Ombudspersons, the Forum of Canadian Ombudsmen, and the Northwest Ombuds Group. On top of Shirley's professional accomplishments, she has achieved so much here at UBC. In fact, a year ago, nearly 20 staff and faculty mobilized to write a nomination for her to win the President's Service Award of Excellence, and she won. And I'd like to share one excerpt from a letter that was actually co-written by 9 staff. The letter rights. Shirley Nakata has been dedicated during her time at UBC in supporting and nurturing those at UBC who have been the most vulnerable and marginalized. Many of us as women of color staff had the common experience of our work and accomplishments going unrecognized. We have all had the experience of our work being unseen or unappreciated, or worse yet, the credit of our hard work benefiting the career of somebody else. In simply being a senior leader, one of the few Asian Canadian women in a high-profile leadership position here at UBC, Shirley has provided a role model for many who have never seen someone who looked like them in a position of authority, let alone believe that as women of color, we could be recognized for merit and promotion. The letter goes on, but that's one excerpt. Shirley is the epitome of grace and humility, which is probably why she took her 10 years to say yes to this gig. And under her guidance and calming presence, she has empowered many students, staff, and faculty to take up space in their work, their studies, in their personal lives. And today I'm finally glad she's stepping into the light for once, because she's always shining lights on other people. So at this point, please welcome Shirley Nakata.
I don't think I even need to say anything after all of that. Thank you so much, Joanna, for that very generous introduction. And thank you all for joining us at Hot Lunch. And here's to another wonderful year of hot lunches and getting together and being with one another and supporting one another through our time at UBC. Let me first acknowledge that I'm striving, I think, every day to become more aware, more deeply aware, more thoughtful about the lands that we occupy, the lands that are occupied throughout BC and Canada. I'm constantly amazed at the grace and generosity of the Musqueam people with whom we work and live alongside, despite the historical injustices and the ongoing discrimination. They are so generous to have us here. And I think we have this beautiful workplace that we call UBC because of the care and wisdom of the generations of Indigenous peoples. And I am so deeply grateful for that. And I do strive, and I hope to continue to strive to advocate for Indigenous human rights, both in my professional and my personal life. And I do try to bring in that advocacy in my work as an ombudsperson for students here. Many of you know our mandate is to help ensure that students are treated fairly in every aspect of their university life. We can't advocate for the individual student because we have to stay impartial, but we will advocate for students' experience here at UBC as a general population. We are a mighty office of 3 across both campuses. So I've got Michelle Quigg working with me here in the Vancouver campus and Cindy Leonard on the Okanagan campus. And that covers a large number of undergraduate and graduate students. I'll talk a little bit more about the Ombuds office, but as a member of Hot Lunch, I know that we are asked to talk a little bit about our personal journey and how we got to where we are today. A long time ago, I was born in Japan. My mom was actually born here on Vancouver Island because my grandfather was a fisher and he was fishing on the West Coast when my mom was born. My grandmother took my mom back quite early on because of family issues in Japan, but my grandfather continued to work here and fish, send money back home until World War II, Pearl Harbor. He was removed from the West Coast and sent to a working camp, a beet farm in Manitoba. But my mom was back in Japan. She grew up there. My dad was born and raised in Japan. They were war kids. So when that was happening to my grandfather here in Canada, my mom and dad were taken out of school. So my mom finished, I think, grade 6, and my dad finished grade 8, and they were there to work for the war effort. I always remember them talking about going out and looking for scrap metal, rubber, there never being enough food on the table. I'm kind of thinking in retrospect, oh, buy all that mass shopping whenever we went to Costco every week, mass buying, and the 2 full refrigerators in our freezers in our basement. So, you know, I think a lot of us have parents and grandparents who had that experience. And I feel fortunate that I think it was more my mom decided that we needed to come to Canada, given their educational and socioeconomic status. We wouldn't have much of a chance because in Japan, you had to get into the right kindergarten to get into the right university. So I think my mom came over by herself. So she would have been about 32, no English. She knew a few folks here. She found a job at the canneries. So she was shipped up to Prince Rupert on her own. She worked at a toothpick factory, and somehow a year later, she called us all over. She rented a house on East Pender and called over my grandparents and our small family. I think I grew up in a very typical Asian immigrant family, extended family with grandparents and uncles, people coming in and out all the time. And as many of you may have experienced, became the translator, the interpreter, the accompanier for medical appointments, because no one spoke English or no one could write English. So I also remember at in elementary school, I had to write my own absence notes because no one else could. And I was very honest because I was a total suck, so I did not forge anything. I also remember I was thinking about elementary school, and this is maybe an immigrant experience, that every year you go back to school in September, and the first question that's asked is, tell a story or draw a picture of what you did on your summer holidays. Never had summer holidays. My mom was still working in canneries, or she did a lot of house cleaning. My dad, who worked on the stock market in Japan, worked as a gardener for the rest of his life here. So I remember that horrible feeling of trying to make up something that sounded like a summer holiday. So after that, I as Joanna said, I did my undergrad and my law degrees here at UBC. Never a question, of course, right, about whether you'll go to university or not. It's just like, what are you going to do? I do remember thinking I wanted to do something in the helping professions. So I was saying, oh, maybe I'll become a nurse. And my mom said, if you're going to be a nurse, become a doctor. And I thought, okay. And then I thought, well, what about a teacher? Changing the lives of children so the society could get better. And she said, if you're going to do that, become a lawyer. So, not that that had any influence on me, but I did choose law. Forever grateful for that legal education and experience. I never went into law school thinking that I would practice law. I wanted to have a legal education to change policy, change the bone structure of society for the better. But I think many people find this, it's sort of a rolling, slushy, slippery hill. You go to law school, you get articles, you get an offer to stay on. So I did stay on. And I practiced law for a few years. And then after a while, I realized that, oh, I'm crying every day because of the practice of law. So I did leave, and I went to the Human Rights Commission and then to professional regulation. I was there for about 13 years at the Teachers College when I saw the job ad for the ombuds role. Didn't really know what an ombuds did. Maybe I still don't know. But when I saw that it got to report to the president at the time, Stephen Toop, and then I would have the opportunity to create an office from scratch, an office that had fairness and equity at its core, and it was for students. I knew I had to give it a shot. So 15 years later, I'm still here, which made me reflect on, what keeps me here? What does keep us here? And I think one of the biggest things is the inspiration and hope I get interacting with students. They give me hope for the generations to come, the years to come. They're often called snowflakes, they're privileged, they're entitled. I see the opposite. And I see students in their worst situations, when they're desperate, they're stressed, they're worried, they're angry. And I still see the best in them. I think it's my generation that needs to self-reflect on our privilege and our positionality and what we've done to the world. And it's going to be these kids who are out here who are going to be able to change the course of events. I love the opportunities like this that we can create to connect and raise each other up. I love seeing how we support one another in the smallest of ways, sometimes in big ways. And we see in so many ways the burdens that we each carry in a very compassionate way. And I think Hot Lunch seems to gather the best people across campus. So I'm so glad to be a part of this initiative. I will be honest and say that I do get frustrated and sometimes disappointed and saddened by the very slow nature of change at institutions like UBC. And I think I get frustrated because I see so much goodwill. I see so much commonality of where we need to get to. And then the systems and structures, both inside and outside the university, seem to make some things just almost impossible. So there seems to be this sort of cycle of trying to change things, and we don't seem to move as far as we could. But that is the nature of a large organization, and that is the nature of these kinds of gatherings where we can give each other hope and inspiration. So I guess the how it relates to my work as ombuds, we are independent of the university, not just confidential. We're not just a confidential office, we are independent. So while we say to students, we will keep all of your information confidential, like counseling, like other offices that you would go to for students, we are independent, which means that we are not an office of record or notice. So that means a student can tell me something about the university and they're not telling the university. It does not trigger a legal duty for me to act. Whereas if a student or a staff person said, I saw somebody bullying somebody else, and depending on who they talk to, a legal duty arises to do something about it. We don't have that. So we cherish that very strongly, because it will help students come to us and tell us the most sensitive, the most distressing experiences they've had with the university. We may not name them, but my job is to carry that information forward for systemic change. We have no power. So ombuds, we have no power. So I always laugh when people describe me in sort of positions of authority or power. We have the power of moral suasion. We have the power to shame the university. If I need to do that, I will do that publicly. That's in our toolkit, but I can't change decisions. I can't change actions, but we can shine a light on areas where there has been too much quiet, too much in secret, too much behind the scenes, where there should be change and light. I do say that we are an office for students, but we certainly don't turn away faculty and staff. Over the years, we have had a good chunk of folks not comfortable going to human resources, although there are fabulous people at human resources. They feel that they're too close to management and to the university, so they will come to us, and we don't turn them away, but we will be a sounding board. Same with faculty. They may not want to go to the faculty association, and we will try to point them in the right direction. Our constant message that we strive to spread out in the university is that fairness does not mean sameness. Equality is not equity. And it is up to us, up to all of you who have any authority or responsibility to make decisions that could impact the rights, interests, or privileges of students, but of anybody, to look at the individual circumstances. Don't get fooled by this idea that you have to be consistent. You have to look at the individual circumstances. And you, as an individual decision maker, you don't have to be a robot. You don't have to be a white, middle-aged, able-bodied man to make a decision. You can be someone who brings their own lived experience to make the best, most fair decision possible. And the Supreme Court of Canada in this great case said, we're all required to have a cognition of diversity and difference to make good and fair decisions. So you think that's a pretty simple statement, but it has been a challenge to convince decision makers at all levels of the university that you have to look at the individual circumstances of each case and not make blanket rules. I think I will probably shut up. I thought there are a few things that you probably don't know from my bio. So I will share that I am a complete Marvel Universe nerd. I have a daughter who is a pastry chef and who has more tattoos than any biker that you would meet anywhere. And my death row meal, I think I put it on, did we put it on there or something? Well, some people want lobster and you may not know it unless you've gone to Japanese restaurants and things. It's called ochazuke, and it is a bowl of white rice and you put hot tea on top and you eat it with pickles. So none of the fancy stuff for me, but it's a peasant food that reminds me of my family. And that's the thing that I would go for anytime. Should I go into some of the questions? And please feel free, if you have to go, you have to go and go grab coffee and tea and things. But some of you were kind enough to give us some questions in advance. There were some very difficult questions here. Please share some challenges encountered in supporting students. The biggest challenge, I think, is their incredible fear of retaliation. So I would say 98% of the people who come to speak with us are so scared that their professor, an administrator, someone is going to find out and it will adversely impact them. And I cannot provide them with any protection. We have a retaliation policy. How do you protect somebody? How do you protect a grad student who goes out in the world and has to go to a conference and they're afraid that their supervisor might give a negative reference of some kind? This happens with employees as well. They're so afraid of talking about their workplace because they think it might impact their employment status. The other challenge in supporting students, I would say, is the extremely change-resistant identity that we seem to hold about what a student is at UBC. I don't know who the calendar is meant to serve, but it's certainly not the diverse population of students we have here. It's this kind of mythical student who maybe lives at home, has their own car, no health issues, money in the bank, and no health issues, mental health issues, no stresses. That's who we serve. And I think we need to start to shift that a bit. Top 3 challenges grappling with right now in your role at UBC. I'll go back to decision making. We don't routinely require training for decision makers at UBC on fairness. So people will be making decisions impacting a student's life here without any training on understanding the procedural fairness rules that apply. And believe me, courts can look at all of our decisions here and criticize, review, make damage awards against. So we are under that umbrella, but somehow we don't feel that we can require people to take the training, especially faculty. Sorry, I know you would. I know you would. Yeah. Concerns. What are your thoughts around UBC's EDI strategies at the university and with partners? Like, who's giving me all these kind of really tough questions? I think there has been movement over the 15 years that I've been here. There is no lack of goodwill. But I don't know how to say this without sounding so cynical. We can't rely on goodwill. We can't rely on the goodness of people who have a particular position at the university, because we have to prepare and plan for the worst person to be in that role and have structures and policies and procedures in place to keep us in line. So whoever's in that position will follow and be held accountable because we have those policies and rules in place. How can we support me to make systemic change at UBC for the betterment of our community? It's all about relationships. It's about building these connections with one another, because, you know, us individuals doing these little piecemeal things and moving, you know, the chessboard kind of in a little bit of a incremental way does nothing. But if 3 of you get together, if 7 of you get together, if 70 people get together and make create a message, we have a bigger opportunity to get things done. Any inspiration for those navigating their career path at UBC? Relationships. Ask people for coffee. And I think I was like this before as well. I was always kind of reticent about reaching out to faculty as staff, especially if you don't interact with faculty in your work. But sometimes I feel they're like the loneliest people here. So if there's a faculty member who does research in an area that might touch on your work or is of interest to you, do a cold call, ask them out for coffee. You will usually get a yes, and build those relationships, because one of the things I do here is that there is a boundary between faculty and staff here. The faculty are the sort of the golden child of the community, and staff are usually forgotten. So if we create those connections, again, if you have a group of 10 people, make 4 people faculty, 6 people staff, and mix it together. Take measured risks. I've been taking risks all my life, jumping from jobs and things where there wasn't necessarily the security, but take a chance. Not stupid chances, but, you know, just really well measured ones. And see where it gets you, because I hear too much about people who are suffering in their jobs, students suffering in their programs. There's only so much that's within your control. One of them is leaving a bad situation, if you can. I know there's lots of limitations to that, but taking those chances and finding the colleagues who will support you along the way, as I've been lucky to have. So that's 12:30. Oh, if there are any other easy questions you want to ask me, there's some pieces of paper, but I'm happy to also answer questions on the side as well. So thank you so much for sharing the question.
Hi, everyone. So we're gonna do 10 minutes, giving people breaks to leave, grab coffee, fruit, if there's still any. And then if you'd like to write out some questions for Shirley, we'll come at 12:40 just to read those out.
They're coming in today. We're like still trying to bring in stuff that we knew from years and years ago. So I think there's just as long as we can be open to listening to students and what they need, because what they need to have EDI and belonging in their learning space will benefit us in our working space. So I think I'm kind of optimistic, and it's a good outlook, I think. Without going into specifics, can you give some examples of cases that have been brought forward to your office? How do students contact you? And can it be done anonymously? Yeah, it can be done anonymously. We can give information without identity. If there is a concern that needs to be brought forward, usually the respondent, the people who are receiving it, will require a name, but there are ways around that. And students can contact us by email, by phone, they can drop by. We're still working a hybrid work schedule, but we are available in a variety of ways. Examples of cases. If I could just generalize and say, undergraduate students generally come to us about procedural matters. How do I challenge a grade? How do I appeal this? I've been accused of academic misconduct. How do I go forward on this case? Graduate students are coming to us about communications, relationship issues, very complex, high risk. And that seems to be sort of the differentiating factor. You mentioned that UBC doesn't require faculty and staff to be trained in equitable decision-making. Does such a training exist? The Office of University Counsel used to provide this training on an annual basis, but it seems ad hoc and it's offered. Senate does it as well. Our office will do procedural fairness training, but there's no requirement that before you sit on a tribunal to make a decision, you have to have had that training. Like, do you want a judge sitting on the court bench without any training and just say, well, she'll learn as she goes along? No. So I think training opportunities do exist, but we just don't make it mandatory. Whoever wants to invite me to a coffee chat, I will certainly say yes. In 2022, year report alerted us to the impact of delayed systems. Justice delayed is justice denied, which is true. What pattern or concern should administrators be aware of now? Other than the pattern of delay, lack of resources is what we're hearing about. People just do not have enough people to do the work we do. But lack of resources legally is not an excuse for delay, especially when you're dealing with people like students who have a shelf life. So say they're here for 4 years, it takes 2 years for their academic misconduct case to go through the entire process, they're done. Some people will leave just because it'll take too long. So I think if we have processes, we have policies, we have strategic commitments, IAP, ISP, well-being, we have to resource them. So those are some of the systemic barriers that I see. Okay, I think I got them all. So again, thank you so much. And yeah, look forward to seeing you at the next lunch, which is the president.
Sign up as soon as you can.
Is it a lottery or is it a
lottery?
Okay.
Oh, the lottery. Don't sign up.
Thank you, Shirley, for lasting 2 rounds of Q&A. So yes, our next speaker is President Benoit Anton. And that's the last Wednesday of February. I don't know that date. 21? Okay. Not the last Wednesday of February, because there's leap year. So it is February 21st. Watch out for the email. It will be a lottery because it always tells it. And thank you all. Yeah. Thank you, Shirley. We love you.